I guess the starting point for me when I talk to lots of businesses is, well, how do people do it at the moment and why is that wrong? And I would say, with very, very, very few exceptions, our business clients would have one of these 4 different approaches to pricing. So the most common one, if you sell boxes or regular repeat services, is what did we charge last year? Let's add a bit on. And that historically has been add a bit on for inflation. So particularly when inflation was running at 4, 5, 6, 7%, what did we charge less last year? Add on an inflation adjustment. Unfortunately, what tended to happen is inflation would run at 5% and they'd go, oh, I can't pass that all on. I'll just pass on 3%, which immediately means you're getting out of kilter with what the cost structure should be. So that's probably the most common in a box shifting business. In construction, the most common is probably, well, what does it cost us to do it? And we want to add 25% to that, or 35% to that, or whatever your markup is. So businesses actually spend a lot of time working out what's the materials cost, what's the labor cost, how much do I want to add on to work out what that price should be. And in my experience, 2 things happen. One is they don't work out the cost properly. It's much more complicated to work out costs than you probably think it is. And there are lots of hidden costs in businesses. Secondly, you then add a fixed markup, which completely takes away the reality of the price. It's just a notional calculation rather than a realistic calculation. Similar to that, which again, probably quite common in construction, is we want to make a 30% margin. Therefore, if my costs are this, I need to add that on to make a 30% margin. Same principles, just a different direction of mechanical calculations. And then the final one is, what's everyone else charging? I want to be a little bit cheaper. So what we call competitor-led pricing. And that would probably account for 99% of the businesses I deal with in every industry. It's one of those 4 methods of setting their prices. However, the problem really is that that has no relevance. None of those calculations have any relevance to the customer's perception of value. What is the customer prepared to pay? And that's a key concept we're going to whiz through as we go through some of these sessions now and maybe later ones in the future, is talking about value and the customer's perception of value. So the basic pricing principle that I'm trying to get across, and it is covered in the book, is there are skills and techniques for how you can do things. So better ways of describing price, better ways of presenting your quotes, better ways of working out the numbers, more accurate ways. But the basic principle is really very simple. The price you set should reflect the value your customer is going to receive. That's the basic logic. If you get that right, if the customer thinks what you do is worth £1,000, then you want to charge £1,000, everybody's happy. The scales are in balance. Value to the customer, price to you, everyone's a happy bunny. If you charge less than £1,000, then the scales are tipping in favor of the customer. And what happens, and this is the most common scenario, is you just leave profit on the table. There is money you could have made that you haven't managed to get because you've set your prices too low. Okay, that's the outcome of not having the right skills to prices. I can't charge that much, I'll charge less, and you've left money on the table. If you charge over £1,000, then the scales tip in your favor, and one of 3 things will happen. The first thing is the customer could say, no, thank you. That's too expensive. I'm going somewhere else. And you don't want that. The second thing is they might buy now because they have a current need and a current urgency, but actually feel a bit hacked off. They think you've charged them too much and just not buy in the future. So there is a risk with too aggressive pricing, even if the customer says yes, because subconsciously they might be saying, well, only because I got no choice, but I won't be back. So that is an outcome we've got to be fearful of. And the final thing is they may haggle. They may come to you and say, well, hang on a minute, that's a bit expensive. Come on, sharpen your pencil. Now, at that point, you have, well, I say 2 options. Actually, you have 3 options. One of them is to say, no, that's the price, take it or leave it. But the other 2 options that you would normally see in a business is they reduce the price. They take 10% off, 15% off, whatever they decide. That is a common issue in the construction industry. Now, come on a bit. Okay, I'll knock off 10%. So we make the scales balance where the customer doesn't think it's worth that much by taking money off the table to make those scales balance at a slightly different point. The other option is you can put more value on their side of the scales. Okay, I can't make it any cheaper, but I could do that for you. I could do that for you. I could do that for you. I could add in a bit more of this. I could put more of that on the table. Now, that depends on what your business is and what services you offer. But your choices are fundamentally reduce the price to make the customer happy or add value to make the customer happy. Okay, they both have the same outcomes of we want the customer happy. But if you take £100 of cash off the price, that hurts you to the tune of £100. If you add £100 worth of value onto the deal, that does not cost you £100 to deliver. It costs you, whether it's 60% profit margin or whether it's labor costs or whatever, it costs you less to make the scales balance by putting value on than it does to take the price off. Does that make sense? So those are your real choices. What we're trying to do is get these scales to balance. What we want to charge, what the customer's prepared to pay are the same, but when they aren't the same, those are the outcomes that we've got to be vigilant to.